Hello, Eastie. So, yay.
Yeah,
And I'm going to welcome everybody to this session. And Steve, thank you for continuing to lead this and putting together a repository of great thinkers and great practitioners that we can learn from. And we've got a
Lisa, you're the
fantastic one
best.
today.
You're the best sidekick and warm-up act I have. You get
There
that
we go.
audience going, and then I take over. It's great.
I've
Like
got
Johnny
to
and
work on
Ed.
my got to work on my warm-up skills for sure. But
Yeah, yeah. What was Jack Parr's sidekick's name? Whatever.
You can't hear this, right?
We can hear that. Yes.
yes, yes,
You might want to mute yourself.
doing
Oh,
good. Eastie on the road and not driving, hopefully. And Muriel, so Stacy. So we've got a good group. Most people watch this in Zoom or in the recording. So I'm anxious to get started. We've got a really full packed conversation with the well, I'm going to let you a
How
hero
about
of my book
can I get a word
world.
in edgewise here?
Yeah. Introduce our guest.
So today we have Darryl Peck, who has two bookstores, and he's going to talk about the way he operates those, is fascinating because he's a real expert in small business and efficiency, but he also has had other businesses which contribute to his skill set. Welcome, Darryl.
Thank you, Steve. Happy to be here.
Yes, yes. And in case anybody has a question, I am in the downstairs basement of City Lights Books in San Francisco virtually. I'm actually at home. So maybe we could start, and we're recording this, so if people have to bail, they can catch up later, but try not to. Darryl, why don't we start by just talking about what, rather than the start of your career, let's talk about the start of your day. How do you deal each day with both bookstores, one which I know you manage remotely and the other which you run? Um, what are your daily routines that are perhaps different than other bookstore owners or not?
Well, I do all of the ordering for our stores. So the first thing I do, although I've gotten to the habit of doing it at night now to try to beat everyone into the order queue in the morning. But if I haven't done it, the first thing I do in the morning is restock both our stores. Our St. Simon store needs restocking daily at this time of year, our Lakeville store every couple of days. Um, But since I've already spent the night before looking through the day's transactions, the P&L for both stores, our coffee shop sales, in the morning, I really just focus on getting books ordered, and then I go in and help open the store.
And when you're ordering, do you have an audience in mind? Do you have a pattern in mind in terms of who comes into your bookstores?
Yeah, I mean, in St. Simon's, we've been open for over 6 years, so we've certainly learned our audience. We've learned what our customers like to read. It's never easy to order for a store, but it's a lot easier once you get to know people. The Lakeville, Connecticut store has been open for 3 months. And while it's a small community and we've been here mostly for almost 40 years and we know the community well, we don't know what they like to read. So, for instance, right now, like most of everyone on this call, I'm going through the fall catalogs, 20,000 titles, give or take, just from the big five publishers in Ingram. And it's easy for me to pick titles for St. Simon's. I'm finding it extraordinarily difficult to make decisions for Lakeville because it's only been 3 months.
Name of
Um,
the book. Find it with a book.
let
Okay,
me move
whoever
this
that
for
is.
you.
Hang on a minute.
I think we've
Um,
got Sandy needing
And then
to
what else
hey,
should I
Sandy,
organize?
Sandy, 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 Sandy. You're interrupting our call. Can you mute yourself? Thank you. Go ahead, Daryl. Sorry.
so it's just very difficult looking through the fall catalogs to decide which ones to bring in for Lakeville. The other challenge is that Lakeville is a very small store with absolutely zero back of house space. We have 96 square feet for shipping and receiving. So I can't bring stuff in if I don't have room on our shelves for it. And so it's a challenge. A year from now, it will be much easier to order for Lakeville as we get to know, as we see trends. I'm a data guy. I like looking at numbers. I like looking at what my colleagues are buying. I like seeing what books are selling regionally. And again, in St. Simon's, after 6 years, we have that nailed. We know the data well. But in a new store in a new community, it's challenging.
What
I
in
want.
Go ahead, Lisa.
I want to back up and give our folks a bit of context, and we'll get there layer by layer. You decided to open a bookshop after years in other types of retail. Um, how did you decide that St. Simon's was a place and that you could have a sustainable business bookshop in St. Simon's? What were the things you looked at?
Well, let's go back. I mean, I've been doing retail for what, 54 years now. So, and I've had various kinds of retail, some very large. I've run a couple of billion-dollar retail companies, a lot of small. The bookstore is by far the smallest company I've ever run. But I was living in St. Simon's, and I was retired for the third time and bored out of my mind. And I ran across an article that claimed that digital book sales were declining and paper book sales were actually going up at a fairly rapid pace. And I went, how can that be? I mean,
What
seems
year
a
was
little
this,
early.
Darryl? What year was that?
2018, I would have to say. Late in 2018, or yeah, third quarter 2018, I read this article. And that got me curious. So I started really digging into it. I started doing hours and hours of research. And then I did hours more. I mean, I probably put 400 or 500 hours of research into it. And I came to the conclusion that the book business was a great thing for me to get into. I mean, obviously, I love books. I've been reading books since I was a kid. I mean, we're big readers in our family, but that's not a reason to open a bookstore. It just helps a whole lot. So I reached out to the owner of the one bookstore on St. Simon's Island, which is a fairly small community, and asked her if she would be interested in having the conversation. And she said she would. And we spent 6 months going back and forth, and it became apparent that it was never going to happen. And at this point, I was so raring to go that I made the decision just to open our own store in the same market. And, to be honest, yeah, I was a little angry at her too, because she had just wasted 6 months of my life. So we decided to start from scratch. We found a location. We bought a bunch of bookshelves from this little company in Tennessee called Franklin.
Oh, I've
And
heard of them.
yeah, and we opened our doors, and the masses just started coming. I mean, I can't sit here and tell you that we were profitable the first year or two. We weren't, but it was clear that we were onto something. And I think by the end of year three, we were significantly larger as far as revenue than the other bookstore on the island that had been there for 25 years. And we've just continued to grow since, including adding a coffee shop.
What lessons did you bring to it from your other retail experience, which, by the way, was a big Apple computer and accessory store chain?
Yeah.
But what experience did you bring from that?
Well,
And then
the
what
Apple
did you learn
chain,
new? Yeah.
well, the Apple that we ran that from 2007 to 2014 when we sold it to GameStop. But what we learned in the Apple business is how to operate on thin margins. Apple products have paper thin margins. We're talking single digits, 7 to 8 points. So if you're selling someone an iPad or a MacBook Pro, and then they whip out their American Express card, well, there goes 3 of your 8 points. So needless to say, you have to learn how to operate on the fringes. You have to really know how to be efficient. Efficiency is everything. And you have to be a master at merchandising your store with non-Apple products that have much higher margins so that your blended margin is something you can actually pay the rent with. And as we opened more and more stores, we ended up with 14 all around the Southeast. We got better and better at it. One fall, I think we opened 5 stores in 3 months. But it was the having to deal with very, very low margins that got us to be very good at efficiency.
And when you say
Going back,
efficiency,
go ahead,
you,
Lisa.
you when you say efficiency, what are you talking about? Are you talking because you have a lot of product, even in those stores, you talked about having in our pre-conversation about having significantly more inventory choices than Walmart, for instance. What does
Yeah.
efficiency mean?
Well, efficiency is, I mean, I think people consider turns to be efficient. I really don't, which we can get into. Efficiency is keeping your overhead low, staffing to a minimum. Everyone works really hard because we can't afford to have as many people. Negotiating every deal to within an inch of its life. We were very, very good at negotiating with our vendors. We had known a lot of these vendors for many years through other businesses we'd had. And so we took a very different approach to our vendor relations. We wanted to be their partner, not just their customer. And it worked out really well. They came to us with special opportunities. For instance, we would work on our Black Friday event starting in June. And by the time we got to Black Friday, we had full page ads and newspapers on all of our markets with these unbelievable deals, $300 hard drives for $27. I mean, we were very good at working the margins. And when you're starting with a basis of 8 points of margin on your primary product, you have to figure out a way to just keep overhead as low as possible. So even though our stores were all in really nice high-end centers, we never agreed to do a percentage rent because how can you give a percentage of nothing to a landlord? And we knew go right out of the gate that we were going to have to contain margin and we were going to have to contain overhead.
One of the participants asked, how does your store, or how did your store differ from the woman's store that you were trying to buy? What was the difference? Besides operational, just in terms of books and categories.
So I grew up in New York City, and I grew up going to Rizzoli on 57th Street as a kid. And I don't know if any of you have ever been there, but it was this gorgeous wooden paneled space, and it was just exquisite. And unfortunately, it doesn't exist anymore, which is a whole different story. But when we started thinking about this, we had the concept of becoming a mini Rizzoli in our tiny little market. And that seems a little far-fetched, but we also, as we were researching booksellers and talking to other booksellers and going to events with other booksellers, one of the things that was apparent to us, I mean, I'll give you an example. I asked everyone how many cookbooks they sold, and everyone told me you can't sell cookbooks. Now, we're cookbook fanatics in our family. We had over 1,000 cookbooks. At one point, we gave most of them away. And I said, well, how many cookbooks do you have on your shelves? Well, the answer was usually, well, we have 100 titles or we have 150 titles. I said, well, that's why you can't sell cookbooks, because you can't sell a lot of cookbooks if you only have 100 titles to choose from. We opened our St. Simon store. We had 1,000 cookbook titles on the shelves. And to this day, 6 years later, cookbooks is by far our third largest overall category behind fiction and children's books. It exceeds biographies, history, all of them.
How did you? Wait, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Darryl, how did you know that was a sweet spot? Besides the numbers, I mean, just in terms of cookbooks, how did you know people would?
Well, it's not just cookbooks. So we also have huge selections of other large format illustrated books, art, design, photography, interiors, automotive books. And the reason that we do that is because we really believe in the perceived value concept in retail. If a customer walks in and they see that you're heavily invested in your inventory, thus therefore heavily invested in your business, they are far more likely to buy a $17 paperback from you than if they don't feel you've made that commitment. And you can't market research this. There's no studies to read, but after 50 years of retail, it's something we've learned over the years. And perceived value is everything. How clean our store is, how well managed it is. Are the fingerprints on the doors when you come in the morning or at 3 in the afternoon? Our mantra is, on our busiest day, the last customer in the store gets the same experience as the first customer who walked in the door that morning. That means everything is in its place. All the books are in their place. The doors have no handprints on them. Doesn't matter how busy it is. And again, these are these small things that consumers don't even realize they think about. But we know after doing this for so long that they respond by being far more likely to spend money in your store than if you don't make that investment or that commitment.
So part of that
no, go ahead, Lisa.
Part of that investment makes it look and feel full and rich, and that's part of the experience.
Not just full, but yeah, I mean, when you walk in and you see shelves full of beautiful, large format illustrated books, I mean, first of all, people are just amazed. And they go, look at this place. And, you don't get that just by having a bunch of paperback romance novels on the shelves. It's not the same reaction. But again, we call it the psychographic. It's the little voices in people's heads that just they can see your commitment. I mean, for instance, I walked into a store in the same shopping center as our bookstore in St. Simon's right when we were opening. It was a little toy store, and she had, $50 plastic, the things you buy on Amazon, plastic shelving units all over the store. And she was getting ready to close. And I went, "Why are you closing?" She goes, "Because no one will come in." And I looked around and said, "Can't imagine why." You know, it, no one wants to walk into a store where the owner clearly has not made an investment in their store and say, "Oh yeah, I want to spend money with you because clearly you're committed to this." Um, so commit, I mean, I use this word a lot. We talk about it a lot in our business. Commitment is a big thing. And having the consumer understand that you're totally engaged and we're willing to take a much smaller turn number on those products because they're kind of halo products for us, right? So when we were selling Apple products, we always had halo products that would drive people in to buy other things. And it's the same with cookbooks or, interior design books. Having said that, we have people who come in and buy an awful lot of these books because they know we have them. We have an interior designer in St. Simon's who comes in every week and buys a stack of books and she uses them as props for staging. Um, so they do sell. They just don't sell as fast as novels do, but we're okay with that.
Are
How
you
big
a
is how big is the store? I'm sorry, Lisa. How big is the store in St. Albans?
St. Simon's is
St. Simon's, rather.
2,100 square feet in the bookstore and another 1,000 in the coffee shop.
And the coffee shop, it's a whole separate subject, but the coffee shop's very important to sales too.
It is. It's not quantifiable. I have beautiful little Excel charts that show how much our revenue grew after we opened the coffee shop. But I can't sit here and tell you what percentage of our revenue comes from people who have come for the coffee shop, but I can tell you that there's a hockey stick chart on my computer from when we opened the coffee shop. And half the people walking around our bookstore have Jittery Joe's coffee cups in their hands, and half the people in the bookstore have Righton Books bags in their hands. So there's clearly a great deal of synergy. Um, it's a pain in the rear to run the coffee shop. I mean, it takes 5 times more work than running the bookstore, but it's worth it. Having said that, I won't do it again. It's just too much stress.
it's too much stress? What's
Yeah, I mean, we've had booksellers who've been with us for 6 years. Baristas, if they last 6 weeks, it's kind of a miracle. You're having to restaff, you're having to retrain. We again, we're very particular about the coffee we serve and how we pull a shot and how we mix our drinks. So we have to put our people through an awful lot of training. And so we need them to stick around for a while to make that training investment pay off. And right now we're okay. We're on an okay streak. We've had people for 6 or 8 months at this point. But there is much more turnover in the barista world. And of course, we're having to restock supplies constantly. We have to buy milk at the grocery store every day because buying it from our food supplier costs 3 times as much. So just a lot of little things that the coffee shop adds that we don't have to deal with in the book business.
Darryl, how do you deal with training in a store, even though you started and it has a long legacy of you running directly? How do you deal with managing it now and enforcing, that's a tough word, but enforcing some of these rules you have?
Well, it's not easy, and it's something I really struggled with when we decided to move home to Connecticut. And I hired a general manager, and I spent months with her side by side. And my goal was to do my best to get her to see what I saw. And that's the tough part. I look around the store, and I having done this for 5 decades, I just have a sense for what the vibe is. I try to understand what every person in the store at any given moment, why are they there? Where have they already been? What books are they looking at? Who hasn't received any attention? Who looks like they actually want attention, even though people always say they don't want any help? And when is the right moment to do that? When do you see on the other side of the store one book that's out of place? And it takes time to try to impart decades of knowledge upon a new general manager. But to her credit, She's really picked it up. She's doing a tremendous job. I haven't been down there since last September, which I can't even believe. I mean, she and I talk every day, and I still do all the buying, but she runs the store.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. Um, and what are some of the other small details that you try and impart on general managers and staff? What are some of the things that we wouldn't, the bookstore managers wouldn't normally think of that you try and impart?
I think, customer experience is a big thing for us. And, it's easy to say, yeah, we do good customer service, but it has to be more than that. It has to be the overall experience. It has to be the ability of our booksellers to recommend books to our customers and each bookseller to recommend different books. So we have a wide range of titles we can recommend. It then becomes apparent that our customers will trust our booksellers and will come in looking for recommendations. It's having a really well curated selection of books in every department so that we can so that when our customers come in, they can always find something. I mean, the difference between us and online sellers of the world, as I think everyone on this call knows, is that bookstores are a place for discovery. You can't discover things on a web page. You can discover things on our shelves. And I like to think that half the people who walk into our doors every day end up buying something that they had no idea existed when they walked in the door. That's what I love. I love having people find things that they didn't even know they wanted. And you gotta have an eclectic, well curated selection of titles on the shelves to make that happen, whether it's in history or biographies or fiction's a little easier, frankly. And then getting the customers to interact. One of the things we've learned over the many years is that if someone doesn't touch a product, there is zero chance they're going to buy it. That's kind of obvious, right? They don't pick it up. There's no way in the world it's getting carried to the checkout or the cash wrap for them to actually pay for it. So we like to merchandise our stores in an effort to get people to interact with the product, to pick it up. And I'm saying product because we don't just sell books. We sell lots of sidelines as well. So I'm using a broad term. You've got to get people to want to touch things, to want to hold things, to pick up a book and look at it, to pick up a blank notebook and see what kind of pages it's lined with. If you can get someone to interact with the product, the chance of them buying it are infinitely more than if they don't touch it.
Okay, so how do you get them to pick it up? What's your secret
Merchandising.
sauce? And what do you mean? So explain what you mean by that.
Well, it's really hard to. That's tough knowledge. It's just knowing how to display things in a way that people find appealing. There's no book for this. There's no manual. You can't learn it in college. You just have to try it by experience. And one of the things I love most about retail, and again, I keep coming back for more, so I'm a glutton for punishment, is the fact that we get to try new stuff every day, every week. For instance, we just re-merchandised 4 tables in Lakeville Monday mornings. I came in and something had been bugging me. I said, this isn't working. We need to change this. I came in Monday morning, and after getting my orders in place, we went and changed 4 whole tables around. And now I'm thrilled. I think it's so much better. And then, of course, I spend the next 2 days just standing there watching how people interact with the displays that we changed. And that tells me everything. So observation is critical. I mean, I think the first 2 years we were open in St. Simon's, I was on the floor every minute of every day we were open, 7 days a week. And I'm kind of doing the same thing in Lakeville. I'm not there 7 days a week. I'm there 6 days a week. But I love watching how people react to our displays and react to the merchandising choices we've made. And when I see that something isn't working, we change it. I mean, in St. Simon's, one of the things that we did the first 3 years is we ran a really fancy report at the end of each year after we did our end of season returns after Christmas. And I pulled this data into a very fancy spreadsheet, and we analyzed every department in the store, how many linear square feet of shelf space we had, how much revenue it created, and then we charted which shelves, which departments are performing well, which categories need more shelf space, and which categories need less shelf space based on the revenue we're generating per linear square foot. So every year for the first 3 years, we moved entire sections around our store, which took weeks of planning because, as we all know, it's not easy to just, if you're going to move science fiction from here, you have to open up space somewhere else first. It's like that little tile game we always used to play when we were kids where there's an open space. So, but we did it every year for the first 3 years, and we watched our revenue grow and grow and grow each year as we did that. We haven't had to do it since because it really seems to have finally normalized. And we'll do the same thing in Lakeville after the first year and then after the second year. But it's all, for us, it's just about data at that point.
Lisa, I'm sorry, I have one more question before yours, I know. So do you use open tables, the sort of James Daunt school, to mix up and get people to browse more? Because when you have separate sections, people tend to go just to sci-fi or self-help or cooking.
We did the one failure of the St. Simon's design was that we didn't create enough table space. We've done our best to remedy that. We bought some more tables from this little company in Brookville, Tennessee. But there's only so much floor space. When we built Lakeville, we built a lot more tables in. So we don't have as much table space as we'd like, and we have to share it between books and sidelines. So we're kind of limited in the number of sidelines we can carry in that store. At some point, there's just not enough room. And but yeah, I mean, it's nice to be able to mix things. We don't tend to do seasonal displays. We don't tend to do holiday displays. I know a lot of bookstores are really into that. We kind of just avoid the constant changing of displays around. We do put new titles out like we all do every Tuesday morning, and we feature them prominently in various places. We change our window displays weekly. But yeah, we don't have enough tables in St. Simon's.
Lisa?
I want to walk back to the 4 displays that you redid and ask you to unpack. What were you noticing that wasn't working that prompted you to say, this isn't working? It was watching people. It was noticing the sales. It was like, and do
All
you
of
have
these.
any specifics about what was it? Was it the content that wasn't working, or the arrangement and the actual shape of what you had going
Well,
on?
I should take a step back and say that when we opened the Lakeville store, we did not have novels or children's books or history or biographies. We only had coffee table books. And the reason we did that is because there's a long established bookstore 4 miles away, and we've known them forever. We wanted to tread lightly. We thought it would be better to be deferential and then change our mind later rather than come out of the gate swinging. Unfortunately, well, I guess fortunately, in the first 3 weeks we were there, every single customer in the door asked where the children's books were, where the novels were, and it got really old, and they were really frustrated with us for not having them available. So we called our favorite fixture company in Brookville, Tennessee, and
Otherwise known Franklin Fixtures.
they were able to throw together an order for us very quickly. We've designed enough stores so David and I were able to sit down and throw together a plan in about 4 days. And we got on the manufacturing line and we were able to put, I don't know, 38 new book fixtures upstairs on the second floor of the building. And then we brought in 7,000 new books. So what wasn't working for us is the way people were becoming aware that we now had novels and we now had new nonfiction titles. One of the problems is that we had the new nonfiction hardcovers upstairs on a table rather than downstairs. And one of the challenges we face in a two-story building is getting people to go upstairs where the majority of our books are. So we're working around that. We're trying to figure out how best to make sure people get the visual indication that there are other things available. Our hardcover fiction is downstairs, but all the paperbacks are upstairs. And we're still, it's been 2 weeks since we opened the expansion. So we still have a lot to learn about how to get the word out, how to make sure people get the visual cue that there are other things available in the store, and how to coach people to go up the stairs. And when they come back downstairs, they go, wow. And that's what we're looking for.
Muriel is asking, when you talk about changing displays, how long it takes you to know your clientele, and I know it's different for each geographic location. You see different people in different places. Can you describe the differences that you've seen in the St. Simon's folks and the folks in the new store?
I think it's a little early to answer that question. We've been selling fiction in the store for less than 2 weeks now, so it's a little tough to say. I think it's the difference between a southeastern town, beach resort town, and a 275-year-old New England town with a bunch of shingle houses in it. Very different communities, and I think different interests. I think different levels of intellectual curiosity. And we'll see over the next year or two what the differences are. But so far, I mean, the good news is that most of the people who walk on the door love books and they want to buy them from us.
You mentioned, I had a follow-up question about you talking about these large quantities of expensive books, really, that you're putting in. And I know Mitch Kaplan at Books and Books is constantly in a debate with the publishers, because he's like, I'm going to return these so I get credit, and I'm going to order them again so you send them right back to me. So we're just expensively shipping heavy books back and forth. Do you do returns, or how do you manage that piece?
We do returns. We've adopted a 3 time a year return system: January, May, and September, and it works out well. We clear out shelf space for the next season's books. We get credits just in time to help us with cash flow at slower times of year. So we've really narrowed down this 3 times a year system. With the coffee table or large format books, we went from never returning them to returning them too aggressively. And now I think we've gone back to returning them a lot less. Yes, they turn much more slowly, but they have much longer shelf lives, right? I mean, a great interior design book isn't like a novel or, a piece of hardcover nonfiction, which really has 90-day shelf life, and that's pretty much it. These books have years of shelf life. So we try to leverage that. We also like to keep our shelves full. And if you return base purely on data or by the calendar, then you're going to have too much open space. Something we actually are struggling with in St. Simon's now. We returned too many cookbooks that hadn't sold, and then the shelves started looking a little thin, and we haven't been able to bring new cookbooks in fast enough because not so many cookbooks come out at this time of year. In the fall, we'll fill the shelves back up.
It's interesting because I was the chair of a small publisher for a long time, and they always said, because I love picture books and I love illustration books, they always said, can't publish any of those. They're too expensive. You don't make any money. You've turned that around in the bookstore, which is the retail setting for them. In part, I think, tell me about this, because they have a higher price point. They also have a higher margin, therefore, right?
They don't have a higher gross margin percentage, but they generate a lot more gross margin dollars, right? So,
Right.
If we're selling a $75 book at the same 46% as an $18 paperback, we're making a lot more gross margin dollars on that transaction. One of the things that does drive is a much higher average ticket. Our average ticket in our bookstore, I think, is about 30% higher than the book industry average. And that's driven by the fact that we sell so many of these more expensive books.
And do you think that your advice to other bookstore owners is to put in more, expensive photographic books or whatever? But the problem is, if you don't do it to the extreme that you've done it, then you don't become known for that, and therefore they just sit there. Did I answer my own question?
You can't. Yes, you can't dabble in it. You either have to be all in or don't bother. And we like everyone, we go to bookstores whenever we travel. And everywhere I go, I see the same thing, a very small, modest selection of books in this category. And I just think that's going to be problematic. So, does it take a lot of capital to put all those books on the shelves? Yes. Does it pay off? We believe it does. In our business, it certainly does. But you have to be willing to make the commitment. There's that word again, and you have to hang in there with it. It's not going to happen overnight. I've done a lot of small business mentoring over the years since I've been running businesses for 45 years now. And one of the things I coach people on is if you really want to do something, you have to be willing to invest 2 years of your life without getting a penny out of it. If you're
Yeah.
not willing to make that investment, you're going to fail. And this is the reason why so many small businesses fail, because they don't have the capital to get through the first 2 years. I'll tell you that even the store in St. Simon's, which did fairly well out of the gate, as I said earlier, did not make a profit the first 2 years. And I think a lot of people would have given up, but there was no way we're giving up in our life. Failure is not an option. We don't give up. We just keep pushing and pushing and pushing until we get the results we want.
I think Stacy had a question. Stacy, he's unmuting herself.
I'm curious where you think demographics come into this, because I'm down in Winstead. I didn't realize you were up there, and Winstead is a much different town than
Then Lakeville. Yeah.
Lakeville. So, like, if you go to Kent, you've got a lot of people who are looking for the kind of high ticket books that you have as well.
But he doesn't have them in Kent, which is interesting to me.
What was that?
He doesn't have them in Kent. I don't really understand why, but
well,
yeah.
I've always seen Kent. I've always seen House of Books as a little bit more high end, at least with their new.
Stacy and Stacy and
question is where
Stacy, I had a question for you. Could you and Darryl explain the difference between those communities you're talking about? We don't know them, many of us.
Well, it's the difference between very white collar, very rich neighborhood private schools up the wazoo, and very blue.
Where Darryl is, where Darryl is, yeah.
I'm very Rust Belt where I am. All the factories have closed, and I mean, Winstead's poverty rate is in the double digits. It's like 15 or 20%. So I'm curious how you measure that, given your long experience. Like, are you aiming at those more affluent communities in the first place?
Yeah, I think it's, picking your markets. I mean, when we were running our chain of Apple stores, and we looked, I don't know, we went out every quarter and did long road trips to look for locations, and we probably visited, I don't know, 150 communities around the Southeast over the years that we were looking for places. And it's hard to define what we look for in a market, but first thing is you just have to have a feel that this is a spot we can be successful. You have to look at traffic, you have to look at demographics, you have to look at access, you have to look at parking, you have to look at who your neighbors are, what are their traffic characteristics, when are they going to be busy. For instance, let's talk about Kent. I know Kent well because I used to run $1 billion company in the tiny town of Kent, Connecticut. Kent is right on Route 7, Stacy, as you know. So it gets an enormous amount of weekend and seasonal traffic up and down that road. But when they renovated the bookstore a few years ago, I kind of preferred the old one in a way. It was, kind of more rustic. Now it's beautiful and modern. And they have a huge selection of books, but they don't really have much in the way of large format books at all. And Kent, I think, is a market that would support that. Now, it's not a huge store. I think Benjamin has limitations on how many books he can put on the shelves in that store. But it is a different market. I think Kent is very different than Lakeville. I mean, even though these two towns are a few miles apart, most people I know in Kent haven't been in Lakeville in 20 years, which astonishes me. Now, we all know Winstead because we all go through Winstead to go to the airport. And, there's lots of reasons to be in Winstead. Winstead's a great town, but Winstead's challenge to me is it has this huge downtown for such a small town. It's got this downtown that goes on for 2 miles. Mm-hmm. And it just seems out of proportion. And, I think it's a struggle to get enough competitive, healthy retailers in a confined enough space when the downtown is so spread out.
The main thing that I hear 2 years in, because I opened almost 2 years ago now, is that People don't even realize that I was there, even though they drive through to town all day because they have blinders on as they're driving through.
Yep. It's a challenge. It's always a challenge. I mean, are you right on the road?
I'm right on Main Street.
Yeah. So signage is really, really, really important. We spend a fortune on signage because it's basically our advertising budget. So first you pick a location that is a killer location. You have to be where the people are. And then you've got to figure out a way to make sure that you grab their eyeballs. I mean, we've been in St. Simons for 6 years. We're in a very large, not large shopping center, but a very old established dining and retail shopping center down there. And people still walk on the door every day and said, geez, I had no idea you were here. Like, are you freaking kidding me? How is that possible? And we've been here for 6 years. Surely you've been to the restaurant across the parking lot from us. Um, but people don't always see what you want them to see, and it's not always easy to figure out how to get them to see what you want them to see.
Lisa, do you have any questions on this front?
Well, let's build a little bit. I'm talking with people every day who are starting bookshops and trying to think through, is this the right place, the right time, the right people, the right demographic? You've been making those assessments. Do you have any advice for folks who are trying to determine if they have the right traffic pattern or they have the right place before they sign a lease?
Um, Tough one.
It's a big
Uh,
question.
yeah, I'd like to say there's a guide, but I really think it's just instinct. I mean, it certainly has become instinct for us. We just kind of get a feel for. I mean, we do an enormous amount of research. We will download traffic studies. We will download accident studies. We will download tourism because we happen to have two stores in markets where there's a lot of tourism. We download reams and reams of data, and I read it all. I mean, I spend hours and hours of my life reading through spreadsheets, reading through boring traffic reports. And then we walk up and down streets, we walk around corners, I'll spend an hour sitting in my car just observing traffic past the location. It's just at some point you just get a feel for whether this is going to work or not. And then for each different type of retail we've done over the years, obviously there are different things we've looked for. But at the end of the day, you need to have, and Stacy, I know this is challenging, you have to have a demographic that's going to part with their money and come into your store and spend. And you have to have enough of those people to pay the rent and pay your employees and pay the utility bill and have enough cash left over to pay your vendors each month. And, I run very detailed pro formas for every location. We throw in all of our startup costs. We run, financial analysis on what we think our revenue will be year one, year two, year three. And if in year three we don't see the lines crossing, then we don't do it. I mean, it's not a location that's going to work for us. So I probably have conservatively 100,000 spreadsheets on my computer. Everything I do goes into a spreadsheet, and I look at it. I just like looking at the numbers. I change the numbers. I chart the numbers, and at some point, the numbers talk to me, and they go yes or no.
Darryl,
You're so
Darryl, I have a wife, but you're a man after my heart. I love spreadsheets. But it's Lisa. I have a couple in the weeds questions, Lisa. One of which is talk about your newsletter because despite you're saying that a lot of traditional marketing things don't really interest you, I gather you do a really good job with your newsletter. So can you explain what you do with your newsletter?
We do a newsletter once a month. That's it. The only time the rest of the year we send out more than one is for our annual Black Friday event. We don't do sales. We've never used that word, but every year on Black Friday we have an event, and that event is 20% off, and we do it once a year, and our customers know we're never going to do it any other day of the year, so they don't expect us to. So the newsletter is sent out on the first day or two of each month. I write the main copy, and I was a journalist at one point in my life, so this is my way to vent a little bit. Some months it's really easy, the words just flow. Some months I have absolutely nothing to say, and I have to sit here in front of my computer until the words come. And then my wife reads, I don't know, she probably reads 50 books a month or some crazy number, and she picks 6 or 7 to write blurbs for. and we feature those. And our customers have come to really appreciate Aeon Selections. So we sell on average about 500 books from each newsletter. Not just the books that are in the newsletter, don't get me wrong, but the customers who come in to buy those books have what we call halo attachments, and we can see how many other books they bought. We use Edelweiss 360 for our email marketing, which has just been a tremendous thing for us. It works great. The customer information gets automatically sent from our book manager system. But we have fun with it. And because we try to engage our customers using this opening few paragraphs of copy with humor and or information and or whatever, our subscription rates stay very high. I think we only have about 10 people unsubscribe a month, which out of nearly 10,000 is kind of a miracle.
Wow. Do you talk about that first paragraph or two? Because that's something I've been, pushing people on, is to not just talk about the latest bestseller or author, but talk about something offbeat. What do you do?
I never talk about books. I talk about the world. I talk about our business. I'm a number junkie, if you haven't figured that out. So one newsletter I did was all about numbers, and I just started writing, and it was fun. And I got so much feedback from people just how much they enjoyed it. So we just people are anxious to see what are we going to come up with next. And again, some months it sucks. Some months I can't come up with anything interesting. And then some months I'm sitting here and the light bulb goes off and I just start writing. And next thing I know, I've got 4 paragraphs and I've got to finish and wrap it up and send it out as a newsletter. So it's an outlet, but it's almost never about books. We do like to do some behind the scenes stuff. We like talking about, the fact that we've just started picking the fall catalog and we're looking through 20,000 titles to pick the ones that they're going to want to read. We talk about the nuts and bolts of our business a little bit because I think people are kind of fascinated by it. Um, but I never talk about specific books or titles or authors in the opening.
I love that,
Interesting.
and that's very
Love it.
consistent with what we've been saying a lot and seeing a lot. I'd love to go back, if it's okay, Steve, to the art of offering help and giving that personal experience in the book. So, from the numbers junkie side to the art and science of being present and hand selling and all of the things that go on. How do you approach people who come in the store? When do you approach them? How do you teach that with your staff?
That's a tricky thing. So one thing that we've learned is, I think we all know if you go up to a customer and ask them if they need help, they're always going to say no. They're almost always going to say no.
Terrible
But
question.
if you let people come in, first of all, we greet everyone that walks in the door with a simple hello. Everyone gets a hello. So we've acknowledged their presence. They know that we know they're there, and that allows them to take some time. We know that most of the people who walk into a retail store are going to go to the right. We understand where they're going to go on our store. We know their traffic patterns. And we also know when they've been in the store for a while. And the trick is to teach your staff to see these same things. And you can look at a customer and you can read on their face when they really actually do have a question or when they're confused or when they're looking for something. And the trick is to go up to them at that moment and go, "Can I help you find something?" And you would believe what percentage of people say yes to that question when they say no to, "Can I help you?" And it's a very different reaction. I mean, it's all the different phrases we use in the way we interact with customers through years of experience. For instance, we never ask anyone if they need a bag when they check out. We ask them if they'd like a bag. And it's just all these tiny little things, the way we interact with customers. When customers come in and they're looking for a book that we don't have on our shelves at the moment, we no longer ask them if they'd like us to order it for them. We ask them if they would like us to call them when it comes in. And what we have found is that the yes rate to that is 5 times more than the yes rate to "would you like us to order it for you?" Because ordering it for you is, "Oh, we don't want to put you out. That's a lot of work. You don't have to do all that." But you say, "Well, we'll call you when it comes in." "Oh, that would be great. That would be fabulous." So,
Love
and
it.
we don't We don't tell them that we're ordering the book specifically for them, but it's the same thing for us.
That's clever.
That is beautiful. I love that, and documenting that for. Let's. I want to make sure we have time to pivot to one other question. We talked a
Well, what
lot
I was going
about.
to say, Lisa, I was going to say one thing about time, which is this is so fascinating. We're going to keep going for another 15, 20 minutes. So as long as Darryl is willing to put up with all his questions and not get hoarse too badly, I'd
I
like to
do
just
have to
keep
go
going.
relieve my daughter in about 20 minutes because she's
Okay,
in the
let's
store
give
by
it 20.
herself
We'll
today.
give it 20 minutes because you're fantastic.
Thank you.
The non-book items in your bookshop. Some call them sidelines. It's a word I don't use because if they're in the bookshop, they've got to be connected in some way.
Sure.
So what? How do you make sure that the non-book items in your bookstore make sense for the rest of the thing that you're doing?
Well, I mean, we don't necessarily just look for things that are connected to books. We like having a fairly broad selection. For instance, our store in Lakeville, the new store is called Lakeville Books and Stationary. So we have a huge selection. I think right now we have 1,600 different notebooks in stock. We have 1,800 pens in stock at all different price ranges. We have a lot of stationery products. We went to the big show in New York last winter and picked up a dozen new vendors. So it doesn't necessarily connect to books, but everything has to add value to the retail experience we're trying to create. So it can't be crap. It has to give that same perceived value as the beauty of our book displays give. And they have to be merchandised in a way that makes them beautiful to customers and makes people want to pick them up and play with them and take them to the cash wrap to have us ring them up. And, but the gift items, sidelines, whatever you want to call them, are things we're constantly changing. We always want to be bringing in new lines. We want to be bringing in different product from the same lines. We keep trying to freshen it. Now the challenge with this stuff is we can't return it, and there are minimum orders. And unfortunately, since our stores are 1,100 miles apart, we can't bring them into one place and share them because then we have to touch them again and ship them. And one of the things we don't do in our business is touch any piece of inventory one more time that has to be touched because it costs money every time you touch a piece of inventory. That's one of the ways we look for efficiency in our business is touch product as little as possible. Out of the box, onto the shelves. Try not to move it 3 times in between. So it's a never-ending learning process on the non-book stuff. I guess kind of it is for books. And in a new store like Lakeville, where their Hotchkiss school is here, and we were open for about 3 weeks before they left for the year, and the kids were coming in every afternoon and buying all these notebooks and pens. They loved it, and we can't wait to see them again when they come back in the fall. But so we're trying to make sure we have stuff that is appealing to Hotchkiss students and to the older demo. I mean, the average age in our town is 65 years old. So we have to make sure we have something for every demographic.
I wanted to ask you about something you mentioned last week, which it does privately, which is about your use of particular software. This is a little in the weeds, but I think a lot of people have questions about POS systems and about inventory systems. So I think you have something that you use for most of your financial and
Well,
inventory questions.
we were an anthology customer when we started, and that was a poor decision. I had analyzed several different POS systems over our many different businesses. We've become POS junkies, if you will. We love a good POS system. And as I mentioned, Steve, to you a few weeks ago, we had a business once where our POS vendor wasn't responding to our needs, so we bought them. And we were able to develop it the way we needed it to be developed. But in this case, Anthology wasn't doing the trick for us. So I met with the folks at Book Manager and they showed me their software and I was just absolutely blown away. Yes, it's a text-based looking system, but it is not a DOS program. But it is absolutely extraordinary. I've never been more impressed with any POS in 50 years. It does everything. It works perfectly. Anything I want it to do, I can make it do for the most part. And if I can't, they are very willing to listen to feedback. We've helped them test some new features. They're constantly rolling out new stuff. I mean, it's just head and shoulders above everything else, if you ask me. And the most impressive thing to me is that the day we switched, it was saving me 4 hours a day from using Anthology.
Wow.
Just submitting orders to vendors via EDI with Anthology, it was taking 2 or 3 minutes to submit each one. With Book Manager, it takes 4 seconds to submit each one. And we are
And what do you
submitting.
use? What are all the functions you use it for? Do you use it for finance and accounting as well?
Yes, it has integrated accounting. So now instead of having to, and we all know how many invoices we get in this business, right? We each get a mountain of them every day electronically. With Book Manager, they use electronic invoicing. So 90% of the invoices are entered automatically by the system. I don't have to touch them. All I have to do is select them when I'm going to pay the publishers each month. For non-book items, you actually have to enter the invoice when you're receiving, but it automatically creates a payable for you. You don't have to go in and manually enter something. So we've never done paper. We back when we had our Apple business, we'd probably get 1,000 invoices a day in that business. So we went to an online documentation system where we scanned everything that didn't come as a PDF already. And I think we got to the point where we had about 8 million documents in the system, and it still worked perfectly because we would have needed to rent 2 office buildings for file cabinets so we just shredded all the paper every day. And in this business, the same thing, lots of paper. I don't have a single file drawer in my office. We don't have a single file drawer in our store, not one. We keep nothing on paper. And now, frankly, with Book Manager, we don't even need to keep packing slips scanned or invoices scanned anymore because we have the electronic copy in Book Manager. So we don't even scan documents anymore.
Wow.
I'm
What
really sure that,
other? Go ahead, Lisa. I'm sorry.
well, Easty pointed out that she uses Batch. We do too. Um, you don't need to use Batch with Book Manager because you can do the same thing, but Batch helps anthology users like us or others that get the same thing done. Easty's
Yes.
nodding.
If I was still
And
using Anthology, I would be a batch client. Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we're Batch clients. So,
I wanted to ask
sorry.
a question about the display. I'm going to step on your toes, Lisa, and ask, how do you deal with face outs in the store? What's your attitude? Because you have these beautiful books. What's
Lots
your
of them.
attitude about?
We try to make sure we have lots. It depends on the apartment, but it depends on the length of the shelf. If it's a 4-foot shelf, depending on whether we're talking about large format books or paperbacks, we like to have 2, 3, 4 face outs a shelf. It's easier during some seasons than others. By the time we get into November, it's really hard to have that many face outs because we have so many titles that are rolling in for the holidays. But yes, that's part of the merchandising thing I talked about before. One of the things we love about Franklin fixtures is that they're not the star. They play their role and they play their role beautifully, which is allowing the product, the books, the non-book items to be the star. I mean, Penguin, Random House, Hachette, these guys spend millions of dollars a year designing book covers. And the reason they spend all that money on book covers because they know sometimes they know it works. I still think Lessons in Chemistry would have been better with a different cover, but it was on the bestseller list for 52 weeks. So what do I know? So
Easty and I
we
agree.
like we like the products to be the stars, not the store, not the fixtures, the products. But as a former lighting designer, I can tell you that we do spend a lot of money on lighting our stores. Everything is beautifully lit. We use a special bulb that has a very high color rendering index because it really makes the color in the product pop. So we look for a CRI of at least 90, and we've been using the same bulb in our stores for years now. It's an LED bulb from Satco. So again, it's just how we merchandise, how we light it, and let the product be the star.
Are you looking at the foot candles at the point of sale? Are you doing that kind of
No,
level
I
of
don't.
light?
I sold my lighting meter about 40 years ago, but
I still got
we,
mine,
you know,
Darryl.
I do hold my hand in front of the light, so like I did when I was a gaffer back in the film business, so I can see how the light is impacting our product. And my staff always laughs at me, but it's just the way we do it.
Do you do anything about
Yeah.
sound and music? Anything special in terms of playlists?
We listen to classic jazz all day, every day in our stores. It drives my staff crazy after a while, but I just love a little bit of jazz in the background. We've tried a little pop, we've tried classical. We find that we use a Sirius XM product. It's a business product, so there's no speaking of any kind, no ads. It's worth the $30 a month, and it just is classic jazz. Now, I happen to be a jazz fan, so I don't mind listening to it, but that's what we play in our stores.
That's
And then one other completely out of context question. So you're a tough businessman. How do you deal with the publishers and their margins and stuff like that? Do you try and grind them down at all? And do you have an ability to do that?
We don't. We're not big enough to have leverage over them. I will tell you that we do have a great relationship with our publishers for the most part, um, especially Penguin. You know, Penguin is a rare instance where the biggest is the best. They do everything brilliantly in my mind. They know how to pick, pack, and ship. Hachette still, one of the problems with coffee table books is our publishers still can't figure out how to ship the freaking things to us. So we do have a lot of damage because heavy books tend to shift. We're finding, interestingly, that we have 10 times more damage in Lakeville than we have in St. Simon's. And we think we've traced it down to the fact that all these boxes pass through a UPS depot in New Jersey where they must have elephants moving the boxes around. I don't know, but the damages up here are incredible. But yeah, I mean, Penguin is really good at pick, pack, and ship. They're good at invoicing. When I have a damage claim, I get the credit memo instantly. There's no approval process. There's no BS, if you will. Everything just works. They make it painless. They don't question me when I have a damage claim. They don't say, okay, like Norton, send us the book back. I went, are you serious? I mean, who is that helping? Do you really want this damaged book back? It's a $20 book. I mean, it's just the same way we treat our customers. I touch on this briefly is, you know, customer interactions are critical to our success. And while we always strive to get to yes, like any retailer, we can't always get to yes. But I tell my staff, these are just books. You know, just say yes. Someone says, well, I bought this book. I don't have the receipt. Take it back, exchange it, whatever. It's a book. It's not going to sink us one way or the other. We try not to nickel and dime ourselves to death. So we're very lenient with our customers. Now, having said that, some customers come in and ask for outrageous stuff, and we just go, no, that's not going to happen. Not in this lifetime. Um, but we always try to get to yes. I mean, a $20 book that may or may not have been damaged, if we have to throw it back on our shelf and end up throwing it in the dumpster, that's life. I mean, it's a book. It's not going to kill our business.
It sounds like you try to develop a trusting relationship with your customers the same way Penguin has developed a relationship with you around trust.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a long time ago when we were selling um, software, we had a software publishing company back 35 years ago. We were trying to get on the shelves of all these retail stores, Egghead Software, CompUSA, and we couldn't get on the shelves because other vendors were paying to buy that shelf space and keeping us from getting it. And then we were trying to get into the mail order catalogs, and we had to pay to put our software in these catalogs. So when we started one of the first internet companies in the world and we sold computer products, we went to the vendors and said, hey, we know what your life is like. You don't have to pay us anything to be featured on our website. So we had a partnership with our vendors rather than this adversarial relationship. And it worked out extraordinarily well for all of us. And we took a company from zero to $1 billion in 5 years. And our vendor partners came along for that ride. And I think they were thrilled. And we never once turned and said, okay, now you have to pay us. We never did that. And when we needed them, they came through for us every time.
Wow. Lisa?
Well, EC's got a question about co-op. Do you co-op? You use the
We,
co-op dollars.
we collect co-op dollars. We use an organization to manage all that for us because it's just, and I pay them a large percentage of it, but I'm happy to do that because I don't want to have to deal with the nuts and bolts of it.
What's the
So we,
organization, Darryl?
um, I think it's just called co-op marketing. I have to look it up. Like all these co-op companies, I'm not sure they're taking new clients because I think we tried to get into the one that everyone else was using and they said no. But they take care of all of it, and we get the credit memos eventually. With I think Penguin and Macmillan, they just issue an automatic credit every quarter. We don't do it through the co-op marketing company. And I wish, one of the things that's driving me nuts about this industry right now, and Penguin is just as guilty as everyone else is. I'm looking through the fall catalogs. This is new thing where every title is buy three, get, an extra 3 points, buy five, get $25 back. I just think this is bad for everyone. One of the things it does is it completely, um, what's the good word, trashes, if you will, the sell-through numbers. The sell-through numbers are no longer accurate because the sell-through is based on something being paid to put that book on your shelf. We don't believe in returns. I mean, sure, we do them like anyone else, but we never buy a book thinking we're going to put it in a box and send it back. We buy books saying we never want to send it back because, as we all know, it costs money to send these things back. And that's margin out the door. Our return rate since we opened 6 years ago is 11% in an industry where the average is 29%. And we take great pride in the fact that now, does that mean that sometimes we don't have the book that someone's looking for? Yes, sometimes it means that, although I think we've got that pretty well figured out. But we don't want to buy. So if the offer is buy five and get $25, I'm not buying five if I can't sell five. I don't want to take 3 or 4 of those and put them in a box in 6 months and send it back. That makes no sense to me. But looking at the numbers in Edelweiss, it's clear that most booksellers are taking advantage of these promos, and the publishers are now offering them on almost every title, which makes no sense to me at all. I don't think anyone wins in that deal.
One question I have also, it's a bit from the beginning of the talk. How much capital do you think it takes to start up both your system and for against other bookstores? Because people I think don't realize sometimes what it takes.
I think a minimum of $250,000 free cash.
Yeah,
if you don't have that, it's not going to happen. I mean, that's a big number, but and it's not just bookstores. I mean, you have to have enough cash to get through a couple of years, and you have to have enough cash to have enough product on your shelves to be successful and to be able to spend money advertising heavily the first couple of years.
And if I had a medium to small size bookstore, like let's say 800 square feet, how much do you think you'd have to spend on book inventory to start?
I don't know. We in our 2,100 square feet, we average around $150,000 of cost on hand at any given moment.
Interesting. Lisa, what do you think?
What did you ask?
Sorry. Startup costs. You deal with a lot of startups. Startups cost in terms of book inventory, just book inventory, not fixtures.
There's a whole lot of answers to that. That's a whole different workshop. We'll have to save that to a different time because there's different theories. And Darryl, we have broken our cardinal rule. We are always 1 hour on the dot, but you have been just
Darryl said, I don't know if Darryl said he had an extra 10, 15 minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
So, that was 10 minutes ago.
That was 10 minutes ago. So we're 10 after, and I know the clock in your head is ticking. Last question. What is a mystery to you now? What mystery are you trying to solve, and are you having fun?
Well, the mystery is whether we're going to buy this other bookstore. We're a local bookstore near us in Connecticut, in the state of Massachusetts, has just closed after 52 years. And we've been working on a deal to buy it for 3 months, and it never worked out. So now we're trying to buy the remnants through the bankruptcy court. And I think we came to an agreement yesterday. And I think sometime in the next couple of months, we're going to reopen the only bookstore in the town of Great Barrington, Massachusetts, hopefully, if it all comes together. So I wasn't looking for a new project quite so soon after opening Lakeville, but I can't see Great Barrington being without a bookstore. So the mystery to me is whether we're going to do that or not.
I've spent a lot of time in Great Barrington. I lived in New York, and I can't believe they don't have a bookstore right now.
Not right now. Nope.
Let me know if you need a partner.
All right.
Well, Darryl, there is so much more to unpack. I think we could do this another 3 times. Thank you for the generosity of your time and for the work that you're doing, and really bringing a detailed and different voice than we've heard from other people. And I know from the Franklin Fixtures side of it, Dave says you need to talk to Darryl. He is the easiest person that we work with. He's the only person that comes to us that absolutely knows what he wants right away, and he maximizes the square footage, and it's like this, that's I was intrigued by Dave's
David's a
experience.
great partner. He and I work together. We just see eye to eye. Like I said, when we did upstairs in Lakeville, it took us a few hours to put that whole thing together. But thank you so
Yeah.
much for the opportunity, Steve and Lisa. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on.
Dale, you're a walking Wikipedia of independent bookstores. They're amazing. So thank you so much. This is extraordinary. I think this recording is going to get listened to a lot. So thank you.
All right, my
Thank
pleasure.
you all. All right, thank you.
All
Bye,
right,
everyone.
bye everyone.
Steve, you can stop recording. There you go.
Yeah, hang on a minute. Do, 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 do.